Imagine being able to press rewind on your entire life. Not metaphorically, physically. Your wrinkled skin smooths out. Your grey hair darkens. Your aged organs regenerate into pristine condition. You shrink back through adulthood, adolescence, childhood, until you become an infant again. Then you grow up and do it all over. Forever. This sounds like fantasy, but right now, drifting through the ocean, a tiny transparent jellyfish, no bigger than your pinky nail, is doing exactly this. Turritopsis dawni doesn't just resist aging, it reverses it completely, transforming from a sexually mature adult back into a juvenile polyp, then growing up again in an endless cycle. It's the only animal we know that can cheat death indefinitely through biological time travel. And the mechanism it uses to pull off this trick reveals something profound about the fundamental rules of what living things can and cannot do. Most jellyfish live fast and die young. They start as polyps, tiny stationary creatures anchored to rocks, looking more like sea anemones than the pulsing bells we recognize. When conditions are right, these polyps bud off miniature jellyfish called ephiri that float away and mature into medusae, the classic umbrella-shaped adults. These adults drift through the ocean, trailing tentacles, catching prey, reproducing by releasing sperm and eggs into the water. Then they die. The whole cycle takes months, maybe a year. Turritopsis starts the same way. It hatches from an egg, settles as a polyp, releases ephiri, grows into a transparent bell about 4 millimeters across, with a bright red stomach visible through its body. It eats plankton. It produces sex cells. By every biological measure, it's a mature adult. And then, when most jellyfish would simply deteriorate and sink, Turritopsis does something that shouldn't be possible. When a Turritopsis adult faces stress, injury, starvation, temperature shock, or even just old age, it drops to the ocean floor and begins to implode. Its bell collapses inward. Its tentacles retract and get absorbed. The elegant swimming medusa becomes a formless blob of tissue. But this isn't death. Inside that blob, something extraordinary is happening. The jellyfish's cells are abandoning their jobs. Muscle cells stop being muscle cells. Nerve cells stop being nerve cells. Through a process called transdifferentiation, specialized adult cells transform directly into completely different cell types, skipping back through developmental stages that normally only happen during embryonic growth. The blob reorganizes itself into a polyp, the juvenile form, genetically identical to the adult it was minutes ago, but structurally reset to the beginning of its life cycle. This new polyp attaches to a surface and starts budding off fresh jellyfish. The same individual has gone backward through time, biologically speaking, and can now grow up again. What makes this so radical is that cell specialization is supposed to be permanent. When you were an embryo, your stem cells could become anything: brain, bone, liver, skin. But once they committed to a specific identity, they locked in that choice through chemical modifications to their DNA called epigenetic markers. A neuron can't suddenly decide to become a heart cell. That's why we can't regenerate severed limbs or reverse aging. We're stuck with our differentiated cells until they die. Turritopsis has somehow kept the ability to unlock these cellular identities and rewrite them completely. Scientists have identified that the jellyfish activates genes associated with pluripotency, the embryonic state where cells haven't specialized yet, while simultaneously switching off the genetic programs that maintain adult cell types. It's using molecular machinery that exists in all animals, but that most of us have restricted to early development. The jellyfish just never turned off the override switch. And because it can do this with every cell in its body simultaneously, it can reverse the entire organism. Before you start thinking this jellyfish has solved death, consider what immortality actually means in the ocean. Turritopsis might be able to reset its biological clock infinitely, but it still lives in a world full of things that want to eat it. Sea turtles don't care that their prey can theoretically live forever. They just bite and swallow. Predation, disease, and random accidents kill the vast majority of these jellyfish long before they get a chance to age or reverse. Immortality through cellular regeneration doesn't mean invincibility. It means that if nothing kills you first, you won't die of old age. For a soft-bodied, transparent creature drifting in currents with no eyes, no brain worth mentioning, and no way to escape fast-moving predators, that's a big if. Lab studies have kept individual Teratopsis cycling through their life stages multiple times, proving the mechanism works. But in the wild, even though there are now populations spreading across the world's oceans, possibly because ships carry polyps in ballast water, we have no idea if any individual has actually lived for decades or centuries. The potential is there. The reality is probably much shorter. You're wondering if we can steal this trick. Can human cells learn to transdifferentiate? Can we press rewind? The technical answer is complicated. We've already demonstrated that specialized mammalian cells can be reprogrammed into induced pluripotent stem cells in the lab. Work that won Shinya Yamanaka a Nobel Prize. We know the molecular pathways exist, but doing this in a controlled way to reverse aging without causing cancer, developmental chaos, or erasing the neural patterns that make you, that's a canyon-sized gap between theory and practice. Teratopsis can afford to completely reorganize its body because it's structurally simple and doesn't have memories to preserve. You can't revert your neurons to an embryonic state without erasing everything you've learned and experienced. Still, understanding how this jellyfish controls transdifferentiation so precisely could teach us to regenerate damaged organs, reset aged tissues, or treat degenerative diseases. We're not copying the jellyfish. We're learning its grammar to write our own sentences. What Teratopsis actually proves is that the rules we thought were absolute are often just defaults. Aging feels inevitable because it happens to everything we know. But it's not a law of physics. It's a biological program. And programs can be rewritten. Death from old age seems universal because almost every organism we've studied experiences it. But this jellyfish shows that with the right genetic switches, the timer can be reset. The limits we accept as fundamental are sometimes just limits we haven't figured out how to break yet. A transparent blob, smaller than your thumbnail, drifting through the ocean with no brain and barely any organs, has accidentally stumbled into biological immortality by keeping a developmental back door open that the rest of us closed billions of cell divisions ago. It reminds us that evolution doesn't optimize for what seems impossible. It optimizes for what works. And sometimes what works is so strange, so contrary to everything else we've observed, that it forces us to redraw the boundaries of what life can do.